Hello and welcome to the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Mike.
And I'm Alex.
And we are back with another exciting episode of our Goose Hot Takes. As always, we have a lot of great future episodes planned with a lot of great topics as well. And the best way to keep up with us is on our socials at Slow Ready Pod on just about every platform out there. And you can even email us, slowreadypod@gmail.com. We always love to hear from you. And we can't wait to get into our main topic. But first, we'd like to get into the news and notes from this week with Goose in our first segment, Hot Tea. So definitely the big news from this week was that Goose was announced as the headliner for Harvest Music Festival in Fredericton, New Brunswick. And they're going to be headlining Friday night. And the festival also has a lot of other great artists like The Revivalists, The Head and the Heart, Melissa Etheridge with the Indigo Girls, and Portugal the Man. And pretty awesome to see Goose going back over the border twice in the same year. So any thoughts on that, Alex?
Well, first of all, Goose is now a Canada band. They're 100% a Canadian band now. No, it's awesome to see them back up in Canada so soon after their Toronto show. And New Brunswick is a really, really beautiful province. I've only been there once for work up in Moncton, and that's about 2 hours away from Fredericton. And it's a gorgeous place to go in the summertime. So early fall here will be terrific, and the weather's going to be perfect. And this is a great, great lineup. Lots of great indie style acts, maybe jam adjacent if you're talking about the Revivalists and The Head and the Heart a little bit at times. But great lineup. Really stoked to see how it all comes out. And hopefully a lot of people can go out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Goose has got a ton of great festival dates this year for sure. And pretty cool to see them at both jam band variety festivals and more indie artists because they definitely fit on both of those bills. And another smaller note, but still pretty awesome, just how much they always take care of us, the fan base here. Goose posted the encore from Grand Rapids Night 3 just a few days ago. And then over this weekend also premiered the whole entire Night 3 in full on YouTube. So I know a lot of us out there definitely rely on Nugs for most of our music and watching. So if you've already seen it, that's great, but definitely open to a whole host of fans now that maybe don't have Nugs to be able to see an absolutely epic show from start to finish. So have you had a chance to check it out over on YouTube yet, Alex?
Yeah, I've checked out the encore video so far, and as we're recording here, they've also announced that tonight on Sunday, the 23rd, they're going to debut Night 2 in full on YouTube. So 2 shows from that Grand Rapids run here. Really awesome stuff. I have not watched the full Night 3 show on YouTube, but I've watched it on Nugs about 4 times this week, which is a big time commitment for us doing a podcast and also having full-time jobs. Awesome stuff to watch there, but really glad there's access to it on YouTube for anyone who doesn't have Nugs or just another place to get shows.
Absolutely. And kind of cautiously hoping maybe one of our Milwaukee run shows will get up there eventually as well. But kind of a light week for news and notes with Goose. So going to get right into our main topic here. And we've had quite a few marathon episodes, I guess you'd call them lately. Just so much to go over, so much happening with Goose's epic run here recently that thought it'd be nice to get into a shorter, more fun topic. And so we're just going to roll right into it, I guess. And why don't you start us off, Alex? You can give us your hottest take, or we can kind of ease into it, whatever you feel here.
So I don't know how scorching hot these takes will be. We'll see how hot they get as we go, but we love most things about Goose. Pretty much everything that Goose does were those homers. So this was actually a really tricky topic for me, but the first one I came up with here that I guess we'll dive into is that if it wasn't for us having a podcast and needing to dive into the archives, I don't think I'd ever listen back to a full pre-2024 Goose show. Like, obviously there's exceptions for legendary songs from back in the day, but the shows are just so much more consistently great now. And I feel like the arrangements and jams are just so much better. It just sounds like a completely different band.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that take sounds hotter initially, but then as you explain it, like I 100% agree. There's definitely tons of highlights, specifically thinking of you 2019 and 2022. Lots of great gems from those eras with the band. But I do 1000% agree that if you're looking for top to bottom quality or just to throw on a show you can listen to start to finish without needing to feel like you're skipping through anything, I definitely feel like since Cotter joined the band, that's where you want to be. So no disagreement there.
So starting off an agreement, no scorching hot battles here on the Hot Takes episode yet. Piggybacking off of that one real quick, I had another kind of tangential one there, which was that of all the songs pre-2024, Silver Rising was a complete travesty before Cotter, and I just could not stand the way that Ben used to play the chorus of Silver Rising with the machine gun snare drum with the entire time while it's this emotional chorus. It just is so distracting. We love Ben, but God, that's awful. Like nails on a chalkboard for me.
Well, I don't know if it reached quite that level for me, but I mean, it was definitely more of like a cacophony of sound in that era. And I will definitely agree that it's not necessarily what would be my first choice to the mood of that song. So, yeah, I mostly agree with you. I just don't know if I'd feel like that it's that egregious.
I had to start off with a fiery, passionate take here to start.
Oh, it's very fiery.
Yeah. What do you got to give us for the hot take so far?
Yeah, so I feel like I'll get a lot of flack on social media and online in general, but that's fine. I'm kind of ready for that. It happens all the time, anyways. But I think that we make way too big of a deal of the fog smoke machine noises on both tapings and in person at shows. I feel like it's one of the most common things I see in any kind of message board thread type scenario involving Goose. People are just like absolutely livid, like it ruins the entire listen back experience, or it's distracting even live, which I really, really don't understand. I mean, I'm not going to go so far as the crowd that I'm aware is out there that has gone so far as to say that the fog machine is an instrument. I won't take it that far, although I know those people exist. But I just feel like at the end of the day, like it's usually popping on like at the end of a peak or like when we're getting into the jam, and it's never at a spot where the music is so complex that I'm losing track of things. And so I think in most cases it honestly just gets me a little bit more amped up and hyped. And so I definitely feel like there's a lot more hand wringing over that one than there needs to be.
So I completely agree with you on the point that I think that way too much was made of it. But in that regard, I'm kind of glad they're gone, so I don't have to see like 800,000 people posting anymore. They weren't on stage for the 2025 shows, as far as I can tell. So less things for people to complain about, I'm for, but I didn't find them distracting at all. Like they were barely noticeable, like in any big spots or anything like that. It was usually during transitions or, big hits, like you said. And Getty's so good at syncing things up to the music. He's definitely like the sixth member, no doubt, with how in sync he is with the jams and where to do lights and sounds and effects in certain spots. So yeah, I didn't find them very distracting at all. And if you were there in person, it just enhances the show experience so much. So I was a little surprised to see them not on stage for that first run of the 2025 tour so far, but maybe they'll be back. We'll see.
Either way, I'm fine with people not liking them, but it's not a travesty the way some people make it out to be. And anyways, like as soon as they come on, Getty's about to paint a tremendous tapestry. So that's something else to get excited about. But anyways, what do you got next for your next hot take? I'm curious.
So my next one should be obvious to anyone who's listened to more than 20 seconds of this podcast, any other episode. But there's absolutely no reason, in my opinion, for the band to ever release another studio album ever again. Like, get out of here with that. Especially with the recent interviews from Rick and Peter saying that they're going to lean more into the live sound on this new studio cut. Everything Must Go. Like, why not just do shorter live recordings of the songs and just kind of release a compilation of those?
So we're definitely going to get to the point now where we disagree because I really like the live album. I really like the studio albums.
Oh,
I'm going to catch
Freudian
myself in my
slip.
own line here. Well, look, it goes without saying. Obviously, anyone that's been listening knows for us, it's live or death. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, nothing is ever going to be live music, especially not Goose live music. So no one's ever going to convince me otherwise. But that being said, I do love how much Rick and Peter enjoy the process of creating an album. I definitely find that some of their best songs seem to have been directly taken from the recording process and just letting them explore themes and writing styles and different genres of music. And they're just both such talented and creative songwriters that no matter how much people may wish it, I don't think they're ever going to truly get away from building out albums in the studio. And I just like to see them continue to explore that side of the band as well, especially now that I feel like they're linked up with the producer they probably should have been all along. It just seems like they're going to keep growing it with every studio effort. And while it'll never live up again to the live stuff, I think there is value in them continuing to make studio albums, even though you and I aren't going back that often.
Yeah, that's the part that maybe I'll walk back my take slightly on. Is I understand there's the studio magic of the creative process, and you can get a lot of new writing done in that studio setting when you're all together like that, and hearing some other unique voices you're not necessarily always having in your ear when you're on the road and stuff like that. And there's something to be said about tinkering with sound and maybe coming out of the studio with some new sounds that you didn't know you could utilize and using those on the road as well. I just, especially in the jam scene, I just don't see there being that much value to these studio cuts outside of like it being a big press release for like a few weeks after the album drops. And then it's just like everyone's moved on to where's the live cut of it.
And that's totally fair. And you're probably mostly right. I just feel like there is at least, 10%, 20%, whatever you want to put a number on it. But I just feel like there is at least some semblance of value there. The other thing I'd say about it is it's also a good way that when you have studio versions, it seems to me it's a lot easier to get those singles and whatnot in rotation for people that are on streaming services like Spotify and stuff like that. So, you know, maybe there are people that just haven't had the great fortune of being introduced to Goose yet. And so I feel like, if something like the Born single or the Hunger Site single pops up on someone's random playlist, there's more chance that they start getting curious and finding this whole scene. So I would say that that also adds a little bit of value. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're totally right. Neither one of us is going back to the studio albums other than to do these episodes.
Yep. Haven't listened back to any of the studio albums since our episode. Sorry, not sorry.
And that is a totally fair take.
So what do you got next, Mike?
So this is going to be probably maybe my most out there take, and maybe it also has a little bit over the fact that you and I are just super huge nerds like Goose is, and we make constant video game references on this podcast. I've kind of already let the people know as of last week we are transitioning to a Mario Kart podcast. Nintendo, we know a lot of great people over there. They're working on us with the rebrand. It's coming soon. And all that being said, I think that Goose would absolutely slay a cover album of video game songs. I mean, just as an example, when I was in middle school, there was this obscure band Ozma that I followed around that was literally only noteworthy to the mainstream public because they did an awesome cover of the Tetris video game song. I think Goose could do very much the same thing with that, and it would just absolutely be bananas with how many electrical components and talents Peter has developed.
I'm here for it. Why yes, dude. Let's get on it.
So that's probably my most loony take. What do you have next?
There was that one song that back in the LimeWire Napster days, everyone thought was System of a Down about Zelda, where it was like, Link, he come to town. They got to cover that. Like, let's go. Let's get after it.
As someone that downloaded every single virus available on LimeWire to my family's PC, I somehow missed that one. You're going to have to share that with me after we're done recording.
Oh, will do. I'm not going in order here, but next up I've got that, caveating this, I absolutely love the Welcome to Delta jam. I think it's great, but I really want to see Indian River get the jam it deserves. And it always gets Welcome to Delta if it gets jammed out. And I think that whether it's moving Welcome to Delta to different spots or only sprinkling it in every now and then, I just want to see a song as good as Indian River get the shine it deserves in terms of improv and where the band decides to take it, even if it's like quote unquote type 1 and just a standardized jam for it. I'm just here for that.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with that. If they do make any changes with it, my only hope would that they don't get rid of Welcome to Delta altogether, because I just think it's a really outstanding jam. It brings some funk to a lot of set lists that I've seen that have not had any funk to that point in the set. So I like it being around, but I definitely hear your point that after a while it can get a little bit stale. I mean, that being said, we really haven't seen Indian River lately, so I feel like if I got it at an upcoming show, I'd actually be more than fine with it. But I think that just kind of proves your point even more, that after a break from Indian River, Welcome to Delta is already sounding a little bit better, that maybe we just need to keep it fresh and moving it around to different songs.
Yeah, and we get the teases every now and then, but nothing quite like the Indian River full Welcome to Delta jam with all the love it gets there.
Yeah, 100%.
What do we got next, Mike?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of a good segue, because in terms of like just keeping the set list fresh, I also had one on here where I just think at this point, Seekers Part 1 and 2, while I love both songs, they were officially the first Goose songs I ever heard. So I'm always going to have a special soft spot for them. But when they're paired together, they just take up a very large chunk of the set list. And so I think that they either those two songs up just for time management sake, or start at least adding some improv either to one or two, or the transition in between them, just something to freshen them up. I feel like maybe more so than anything else in the catalog, they've kind of been stale set as they are for the longest time period. It's always both of them back to back. They're always played mostly the same way. And so just in terms of variety, I definitely don't want either song to go away, but I think we could mix it up with them a little bit.
So I agree with you on the point that they should split up Seekers 1 and 2 every now and then, just to keep you on your toes. I had a hot take that's kind of related to this that maybe I could bring up now, just and get back to your point a little bit, is that
Please.
I put that the Goose fan base, and us included, are just way too fixated on the jam sometimes, and we don't appreciate the band's lyricism and their writing, and we don't really give some of these shorter songs that don't get type 2 jammed and crazy improv the shine or love they deserve. And I just don't think that every song in the catalog necessarily needs to have some kind of jam for them to be respected or talked about. And we are guilty of it on this show, not highlighting songs like this, but like deeper tracks with storytelling or deep lyrics like Dr. Darkness, Seekers, you just talked about, Turn Clouds, Your Ocean, or even some of the more even creative storytelling like Hot Love or Turbulence. I think they're still fantastic, even if they're not quote unquote jam vehicles. And they break up a show nice. Like they just break up a show nice. So I think it'd be cool to get like a surprise version every now and then that gets a cool jam, but I just don't think it needs to be a consistent thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm definitely guilty of focusing way too much on the improv from time to time. And I'm not even saying that they need to do it all the time. And it wouldn't even necessarily need to be a jam. They could just split up Seekers, or even just like change the intro to Seekers Part 1. I mean, you've got Atlas Dogs out there. Until recently, it was a fairly static song that didn't get jammed out, but they switched the intro. You've got two different kinds. I really kind of loathe the 80s version of Indian River, but I mean, it's still playing it two different ways does keep it fresh and add some variety. So, I mean, I'm never going to discount the fact that Goose is amazing at singing and songwriting, and it's part of the reason that I love them. So, definitely all for, variety in terms of having just songs in the set as well. But I think there's still room to be creative, to where, especially songs like Secret 1 2, where I don't really feel like they've changed meaningfully in 4 or 5 years. You could just add a little bit of change to them, and I think it would go a long way.
I respect the take. I just think it'd be nice if we considered just how boring's not the right word, but how insane a set of only jams would be for like folks who like the singing part of Goose. Like if you're gonna go to a show and get 8% of the show has any kind of vocals in it, like that's not for everyone.
No, 100%. And I saw someone actually in a thread the other day say, and it was shocking to me, but it just kind of reminded me that we're all different in what we want from live music. But they were basically saying that they would be happy if every song was 10 minutes or 12 minutes long and nothing was ever longer or shorter. And so, like, that was a wild take to me, because that's not what I'm looking for. But I think that just, there's still room to be creative, to where, especially songs like Secret 1 2, where I don't really feel like they've changed meaningfully in 4 or 5 years. You could just add a little bit of change to them, and I think it would go a long way. all of us are coming to the music for different things. So got to leave space for that as well.
Yeah. Everyone's wanting a different thing out of their show. They're all there because we share a love for Goose, but we all love different parts of it. And for this person, this would be a nightmare. But my next hot take is just because a jam is 30 minutes long, it doesn't automatically make it a great jam or a top jam of the year. I think there's a huge underappreciation for like these like 15-ish minute long jams where the band kind of hits the ground running and they cover a ton of ground via like one or two concepts before quote unquote ripcording it back to a finish. But I think some of the best exploration is done in some of these shorter jams, and they just don't get very much love for more than a day after the show's over because it wasn't 30 minutes or it wasn't 23 minutes or whatever. And some of the best exploration can be done even on a song like we've talked about it. Like we want to see a longer version of Butter Rum, for instance. Like there's been some really cool stuff, like straight type 2 at the gates on Butter Rum and great improv, and it's just really short. And maybe just because it's short, it doesn't get a lot of chatter or buzz, but it's still worth diving into and being like, wow, they pulled out some really cool stuff here that they're going to add to the repertoire. I just think we got to find a way to give some of these shorter jams more love now that Goose is getting so much better at hitting the ground running.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge focus of 2025. I think I might agree with this more than I agree with anything else because this is just so 1,000% on the money. But I mean, there's so many examples recently. Arcadia at Goosemas was just brand new direction. Draconian at New Year's, I still am listening to like a crazy amount. And both those are like 17 minutes or less. And so as they get more efficient and amazing chemistry at being able to do these things, not just through a patient, long approach or with a lot of vamping or, searching for the next place. I definitely feel like you're right on the money there. We've got to start giving more props. Short jams deserve love too, because some of them are more original than things that are happening in 28 minutes a time. So definitely 100% there.
Yeah. So what do you got next here, Mike?
So I'm trying to decide how scorching I want to get here. So
Get so scorching I want to punch the computer screen.
So this is a big deal to me. I've noticed it a lot here recently, and I think the problem is getting a little bit worse. But not to be the old man complaining about like the young kids and show etiquette and all of that, but people really need to stop yelling things out at the band members in between songs. Like it's just getting absurd, and like some of these people are yelling out full drunken sentences that none of us could even understand what you're saying. Even on the seventh and eighth time, still don't know what you're yelling, but it's just very distracting to the band. And I've even seen Rick get a little bit annoyed when he's trying to like say things to the band members through their mic at the back of the stage there about like what's coming next or whatever. And it's not helping anything. None of us understand the point you're trying to get across. And it's rude and distracting. And these boys need to focus with all the crazy, sick improv they've been doing lately. So I just feel like almost like maybe we should have like a class for new jam band fans about how to act and not act at a show. And if that sounds too get off my lawn, I'm sorry, not sorry.
Dude, I had a couple of like old man yells at clouds takes here too, and we should like set it up kind of like getting a driver's license. It's a jam band fan license. You gotta like have 100 hours with someone at a show who's a veteran of the experience, and then you take a written and verbal test, and you get put in front of like kind of board who decides if you can be a true jam band fan. Because no, that's ridiculous. But my next take is like, some people really have no grasp on when or where to scream or yell during a show. Like there's like obvious cues in the music, like after a ripping solo or a part when a band member throws his fist up, or like something that like has become like a fan tradition. Like again, going back to Butter Rum, there's the Butter Rum cues that you yell back at the band and the woos and all that. No, we got people like going like woo in the middle of like the seventh word of Born during a song, or like I don't know. It's just too much sometimes. And like, we're listening back to these recordings, like literally today, we're in the car and we just got a new puppy, and there's like all this wooing going on in the background of one of the Milwaukee shows. And we thought it was the new puppy, like making noises. And no, it was just someone being a straight banshee, like making absurd yelping noises in the background during the middle of songs.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I mean, since we're on this theme anyways, do you have like any more like grumpy old man you shouldn't do this at concert takes that we can just kind of throw into this section?
Oh yeah, my last one here is that as handling most of the social media for the podcast, I see a lot of like the public discussion, especially on Facebook for some reason this is a big thing. And I don't know if people have just like not been in a GA section lately or something like that, but have the people who critique how people dance during Goose shows been to the GA section of a show lately? Because there's not as much room to dance freely as you think. And if you're that person who needs like 4 feet of space around you because you're flailing your arms around like SpongeBob SquarePants during his jellyfish dance and being a total maniac, like you're just like rude to everyone around you. And the concert's not just for you, it's for everyone around you too. So maybe I'm just that guy, but there's not that much space in a GA section anymore these days. They're all oversold. And there's not enough room definitely for everyone to be like boogieing so hard that you have like a full bubble around you. So you're packed in there like sardines. So most people are going to be bobbing in their little bubble of like maybe like 6 inches of space in any given direction, not flailing around like a clown.
Oh, it's totally fair though. And it leads me into 2 points that I want to link to this as well because I feel like they're very much apropos now that you've gone there. But one quick thing, if you have an aisle seat at a show, please do us all a favor and stick your leg out into the aisle. You'll have more room to dance. Everyone in your aisle will thank you later on, and we'll all just have more space to operate. I know that's the first thing I do when I have an aisle seat. But the other thing, and maybe more important to note here, is that I definitely think that I'm at the point now where I'm not going to stop going to the occasional show and being in the pit because I do like watching how they navigate improv together, and watching the changes happen in real time up close is always thrilling to me. But I think as an overall fan, I think that I can 1000% definitively say it is a much better experience to see Goose at the back of a venue than it is anywhere up close. I mean, I cannot stop myself from moving the entirety of the show. And you just really, at the end of the day, can't put a price tag on not having to apologize for your elbows every 5.7 seconds, which is my experience anytime I'm up front or in a crowded row of people. I'm not trying to bump into you, but it's just going to keep happening over and over again. It's a very frustrating experience that you can't be loose and free at a show. So, lawn for life.
If you're that person that I was describing who like has to like get down so hard that you're like have your armpit in someone's real estate for like 84% of the show, like the back of the venue's a great place to dance, and that's where I go a lot of the time because I can be that person sometimes watching Goose, and the light show is way better back there. But yeah, it's awesome. Like you get the best of taking in the light show back there, and you also get the most room to dance and freely express yourself. But I get just so like old man agitated seeing people being like, people aren't dancing hard enough in the pit. Like, what the fuck? Do you even like the band? Like, let people enjoy the music how they enjoy it. And there's also not enough room there for everyone to be getting down as hard as you think is appropriate. But there's plenty of getting down in my experience being there in person.
Yeah, no, the pits have gotten a lot more crowded recently, and that's only going to continue. Your point is well taken, but what do you got next?
We recently got the release of the Live at the Fox Theater shows from Atlanta, and it was on Spotify and its official release, and the vinyl release is cool and all that. But I don't see the point of the band releasing these kind of shows in full like this anymore. And I think they should go back to their original model of the Alive and Well and do like a sampler of the best of a tour or a year or whatever for people who are not streaming using Nugs. Like if you want access to a full show, you've got Bandcamp, you've got Nugs. They're putting tons of shows up on YouTube. For the streamers like Apple Music and Spotify and all of that, I think they should be releasing like their best of and like trying to draw people in with some of their coolest versions of songs versus trying to find, one show that might have 2 of the top 15 moments of a tour or whatever. Like you can just actually have the top 15 moments on an album and release it all at once.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that take. I mean, I think it made more sense earlier on in their career, but I think at the point that we're at now, like you've probably either got Nugs or you're ordering the vinyl. Like all of these things can be purchased if you really have to have them from that specific show. But I think, like, especially just in thinking of terms of like Spotify and Apple Music, a sampler platter makes way more sense and could get people exposed to way more of the best of whatever recently has happened with Goose. So that's definitely a great point.
Yeah, and even for stuff that isn't necessarily it doesn't have necessarily like the greatest versions or even the greatest moments, but you want to promote songs. Like if you want to promote the new tunes like Draconian Meter Maid and One In, One Out and stuff like that, like you could just release them on a 2024 or Live and Well volume, whatever. And like you could at least have those songs and have people have access to them before they go to a show or get them interested in your new stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Where are we going next?
Yeah, so for my next take, I'm just going to basically say that it is fully safe at this point to say that it is no longer the Rick Show. I think it used to be the most common thing I would ever see on Reddit would be just that you would without fail see in Goose threads the band is going to be stuck in the same place until the rest of the band members level up, and it's no longer just the Rick Show. Like Peter has to become this much better of a keys player, and Trevor needs to become this much more dynamic of a bass player, and blah 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 blah. Just all this absurd bullshit constantly. And I think that anyone that's been listening to Goose since Cotter joined the band, and specifically the last 6 months, like the quality of jams and the amount of times that you can just immediately pick out Peter's leading us into that section, or Trevor's helping us get over here, or Cotter's keeping the band, focused on that pocket. Like it's just so much more of a group improv setting at this point that while Rick is still my favorite guitarist on planet Earth, it is 1000% unfair to keep saying it's the Rick Show.
I completely agree. And I think that was totally overstated even the last few years before Cotter joined the band. There was oftentimes you can go back and hear places where Trev or Peter were really taking charge of certain jams, and they've only gotten more emboldened since they've gotten more comfortable in the band, and this new dynamic with Cotter has just led to a lot more full band jamming, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it's been overstated for a long time now, and definitely it's not truly the case anymore. And on a side note, like Trevor's always been amazing. I don't know why people talk about him needing to level up, in my opinion. And Peter's really the one who I feel like has really improved the most in his playing, but he's always kind of been his superpower's always kind of been he's amazing with sound. Like he's the best at understanding the sound for the moment in the band in terms of effects or like textures and things like that. So I think the critique was like semi-fair maybe, but Rick's gotten so much better at hanging back, and I think he's always tried to let other folks shine whenever he can. He's just such a talent, and he's such a wizard at finding melody that he's always just going to be up front and center no matter how much he holds back.
Yeah, 100%. And to your point about Pete, I think like he's always been so creative in terms of musical ideas. They're always like right there for him. I just think his proficiency with keys and all of the different sets of keys that he has in his giant space pad over there on the side of the stage, he can just do 3 or 4 things at once. And he's so much quicker at pivoting from one idea to the next than he's ever been. It just keeps getting more ridiculous. But anyways, what do you have next for us here?
I've only got a handful left. But here's another one from me scanning the online presence of the Goose community a bunch. And maybe it's just the vocal fans, but anytime someone brings up like a sit-in or like a dream guest or anything like that, there's so much hate for sit-ins. And it might just be a jam band thing in general. But I'm here to say, give me sit-ins all day. Like it's always like a song or two at most during a show. And if it's keeping the band inspired and motivated to collaborate with artists they respect, maybe pushing their boundaries a little bit, getting them a little uncomfortable compared to the normal routine in a good way, I'm here for it. So let's quit complaining about sit-ins because it's not like it's the whole damn show.
Yeah, and there's a lot to love about it. I mean, you and I talked even just one of the last couple episodes about how much we love it when they get to play with one of their heroes, and it's just so evident that they're playing with someone that they admire musically. It's always so neat. And I mean, also when they do a sit-in, it's probably the only time you're going to hear that song played with Goose. So it's also a pretty special moment. And like you said earlier in this episode, we all tend to focus a little bit too much on the improv, but if you even look at our dream set list, like that was all jams and it was 5.5 hours long. So to build a proper set list that's balanced, you're going to need some short songs and some guest spots. And I'm for the well-rounded set list, so definitely too much complaining about that.
Oh, most definitely. As much as I would love a 5.5 hour long Goose show, like probably not over 2 sets. That would be a little nutty. When you use the bathroom, maybe a 3 or 4 setter.
Well, you'd use it during flow down, but
Hey, whoa! I'm a flow down sympathizer here. You can get down to some flow down,
you can.
especially a flozer.
That's too good.
I think you're up next, buddy.
Okay, yeah. So another one. This is just a gentle suggestion, I guess I would say, as far as a hot take. Take this Cotter and do with it what you will, but I think it would be really great to see if he tried out set break outfit changes. I think he's like undeniably one of the most fashionable musicians I've ever seen in my entire life. And everyone gets so excited about trying to see what he's going to be wearing every time that they come out on the stage. So it doesn't need to be like Beyonce or Taylor Swift level, but I'd just like to see more of what's in this dude's closet.
Whoa, well, back off with that because we want to see the Taylor Swift style outfit changes. Let's get new themes multiple times during the show, different outfit for the different big jams. Let's get after it. And in fact, if Cotter does some cool shit like Miss Taylor does and like stomps on the ground and suddenly goes through a trap door and appears behind everyone in the crowd, like let's just get after it. Why not?
I love it. Take my idea and make it crazier. I'm all for it.
Cotter the Eras Tour. Let's go.
Oh, we've got to make that into a t-shirt right away.
I'm sure there's something out there already. Etsy has some amazing stuff.
Well, what do you have next up?
All right, last up, and this is going to probably irk one of our listeners, but it took all of me yesterday when we were texting to not say this because I had this planned as my first hot take when we came up with this episode idea. And we were talking about jams, and there's a handful of jams where I feel like they maybe are a little overrated for my taste. I mean, they're still highly rated for me. They're just not top 10 of the year or anything like that. But I think a lot of fans, us included, are very guilty of using the term patient to describe a jam like way too liberally when it's just a bunch of like vamping or trying to find your footing, moving to the next concept, extended transition time. And I feel like the term patient has really been like redefined for me in these last few months with Goose. Like, for example, the Hunger Site jam at Goosemas. You need to have a payoff from like hearing foundation be built up brick by brick, layer by layer, for me to really be describing a jam as patient in 2025 for Goose, as opposed to just like, let's just play and chug along and figure out who comes up with something catchy that we can latch onto to move us into the next section.
Yeah, I think that's totally valid. And it's definitely like top of mind as well, because we've had some of the best examples of what can happen when they take a patient approach here recently. Your point about the Hunger Site from Goosemas is definitely well taken. There were at least 2 from Grand Rapids and a couple from Milwaukee as well that were like close to fitting that same bill, although maybe they varied and ventured off a little bit at least. But I still think that it definitely is overused. And I even saw a couple times where people would like say like the Big Modern from Homedale was a patient approach, and you're just like, well, I don't know about patient, but it definitely gets used probably more liberally than it should be, when I definitely agree we should be saving it for those rare examples where it's like one little tiny addition every time back around until you arrive at this, how did we get here? We've kind of been in the same mode the whole way, but it arrived at a very different size and scope. So yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to make it clear, like, improv music is very hard. You're not going to like hit the ground running with new concepts or finding something that you can build up brick by brick every time, but you're never going to bat 1,000 trying to do that. So this is no shade on when that happens. I just think it's the term patient has just been redefined for me, and I think it was just a little overused.
Yeah, 1,000%. So I just have 2 left. I'm just going to throw them out here both at the same time. One doesn't really need a ton of commentary, but I just really feel like Rick should bring out Dracul more often. We've only seen it like 2 or 3 shows, and at least a couple of those times was just due to guitar issues with his main guitar. And ever since I learned what Dracula was and how it was made and all of that, I just think it's the coolest instrument ever made, maybe. And we should see it more often. And the other thing is just that I've started to see it's still not difficult. So I'm not complaining whatsoever. I got everything I wanted for summer in line fairly easily. But you can kind of see on the horizon getting tickets for Goose is not going to be easy for too long of a time, anyways. And so you see a lot of other jam bands and big artists do this. I really think within the next couple of years, we're going to really need to have a Goose fan club just so at least those of us that are like following them around on tour can have like a somewhat reasonable way of obtaining tickets, even if they're at the back of venues, just to get in the building. Because I think the demand for Goose is just going to go off the charts here soon.
So to your first take, Dracul, yes, absolutely. Yes. I think that guitar is awesome. I think maybe it needs a little more time having its perfect formulation of tone fleshed out, but I want to see that thing on stage all the time because it's gorgeous and I think it sounds great. Got a warmer tone, in my opinion. And then to your second point, the fan club, yeah, I think it needs to happen. I think that as they've gotten as big as they are already, it probably is long overdue at this point. And that kind of reminded me of another hot take I didn't have written down here, and it's why do we have 2 levels of VIP on tickets? It's just like confusing and kind of dumb to me. And maybe there's a reason for it I don't understand, but after the mayhem at Goosemas I saw with like the 3 different lines of normal peasant tickets and then VIP, TED VIP, and then Super TED VIP. And now there's multiple lottery lines for the VIPs. Let's just make one VIP and people can like buy add-ons or something if they want the extra perk. Like, I don't know. It just seems like it's an extra layer of confusion for no great payoff.
Yeah, 100% agree. We definitely have lots of friends that were kind of feeling like they missed out on certain aspects of Goosemas that they were expecting to be a part of just because of all of the confusion. And it's more confusing for venue staff that aren't used to letting in concert crowds that way. And I just think like different tiers of pricing, I think it just matters on like the circumstance, like because I thought it was so cool what they did to make Mexico work for people of different economic brackets. But like at a concert like Goosemas, where we're all just going into what essentially amounts to a mid-size college basketball arena, like I mean, nobody should be missing out on anything that came with their ticket just because it's too much for the venue staff to orient everyone in the proper lines. So I think it should just be like if you've got a TED ticket, you've got a TED ticket, and that's it. It's just one flat rate, at least for these big shows in the US. If it's a festival, that might be something different. But yeah, I hear you loud and clear, buddy.
I mean, even if it comes to, and like, I'm not necessarily promoting like paying a lot for a ticket, but even if it comes to like you're paying, everyone pays the Super TED rate for the VIP or whatever, like, I don't really see the need for the multiple levels. Or if everyone's just paying the regular normal TED VIP price. I've literally never paid for one of these, so I don't even know how much it costs. But if you're just paying that and then you buy add-ons for like whatever the Super TED perks are, like lounge access or whatever comes with it, I don't actually know because I'm never going to be in one of those lines apparently because they sell out in 4 seconds.
Well, like I mean, for example, like in summertime when I did TED VIP for Charlotte, like it was fairly straightforward. All of us only had one level of ticket, and the main benefit was going into the venue 30 minutes early. So, like to me, like that was a straightforward process. But I don't feel like just because the scale of the event gets bigger for something like Goosemas as opposed to like a mid-size amphitheater in the summer, I understand they're very different, but like I still don't really see any logical reason to have more than one type of TED ticket. Like, if you want to pay the extra money, everyone gets these perks, and I would just leave it at that. But that's just me. I agree with you, though.
I'm talking to Mr. Fancy Pants over here, Mr. TED VIP.
I mean, it came with a puzzle, which was cool. I'm happy I did it, but one ticket's fine.
You got any last hot takes? Or I'm out. I'm fresh out.
No, I am all out as well. That was a lot of fun, though. We should do something like this again in the future. I hope you all enjoyed it as well.
I like the spice. I like the spice.
We tried to make it a little spicy. I mean, maybe not the bomb level, but a little spicy, anyways.
Well, I think maybe we should start another podcast of just like middle-aged men whine about the youth. We did pretty good at that.
Stay out of our
Or
concert venues.
middle-aged jam band fans whine about other fans.
Yeah. No, we could do that. We definitely could do that. I'm all in for that rebranding.
There you go.
Well, thank you, everyone. We've got another great episode coming up for you here in the next couple weeks. Thank you all so much for the support. This was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoy it. Anything else before we sign off here, Alex?
No, just be sure to check out our socials at SlowReadyPod anywhere you're at. Also email us slowreadypod@gmail.com. During these off seasons between the tours and stuff, we'll be trying to release episodes every few weeks. We have lots of cool ideas, so stick with us and hope you enjoyed this one. We'll see you next time.